There comes a time in every woman's life where she has to either shut up or put up. And because my little Gemini mouth was never gonna let me shut up, my Sagittarius moon is about to put up and spill the red flag tea on myself.
Wait. Time out.
I mean, it's only fair, right? Because for most of my red flag dating story episodes, we spend a whole lot of time talking about somebody else's mess. And trust me, baby, when I say I still got plenty more stories to tell. But that's not our purpose today. Because after looking back over every serious relationship I ever been in, I realized something that I have to acknowledge and admit. My biggest red flag was the version of myself I was willing to become to keep a relationship.
Yeah, you heard me.
But before I start dragging myself through these here Gulf Coast streets, baby, welcome back to Sister Signs and Red Flags, the podcast where astrology ain't therapy, but girl, it's close. I'm your host, Leka, and if you're new here, hi, hello, and welcome to my show. To my returning viewers and listeners, thank y'all so much for coming back. And I may need y'all to stay on standby because, baby, I might have to phone a friend after this episode is over, honey, because I might just fall out. I ain't gonna hold you, but all right, y'all. Let's talk about my bullshit.
Tell me everything.
My first serious relationship was with one of my baby daddies, Lionel. I was 15 or 16 years old when I met him, but Lionel and I were together off and on for about 4 or 5 years. And during that time, we lived together, we raised our daughter together, and for a good portion of our relationship, he was in and out of not only juvenile detention centers, jail, and eventually prison because, baby, my guy was a street pharmacist. Because I've never talked about Lionel on this podcast, before I do, I want to give you a little context or a little background. He was physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive. I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to go any deeper than that today because that's a completely different story for a completely different episode. But I will tell you this Leka was definitely a ride or die. And I mean legitimately ride or die. Me and this man did some things together, baby. But listen, don't ask me no follow-up questions because if I start telling y'all everything I did, honey, everything we did, listen, the statute of limitations might have expired, but I'm not trying to fuck around and find out for real. Let's just say this. Young Leka was outside and turned, baby. And at the time, I thought all of that meant I was just being a good girlfriend. Meanwhile, child, ain't nobody ever sat me down and told me what being a girlfriend actually meant. I did what a whole lot of us do. I pieced it together through music, movies, books, and television. Baby, when I say I had absolutely no business reading the coldest whatsoever, none of the business. So basically, in my mind, love looked a whole lot like loyalty, and commitment meant proving yourself. So when a man I love needed me, baby girl, I showed up. I asked no questions. I had no hesitation. I had absolutely no fucking boundaries. And that was the essence of the problem. I didn't have any boundaries, but I had loyalty. Nobody had taught me the difference between loyalty and self abandonment. And looking back now, I don't even know if I ever stopped to ask myself, do I want to do this? The only question I remember asking was, what does he need from me? That's a dangerous way to love somebody because eventually you stop making decisions based on your own values. See my Pisces rising written all over this little relationship because one of the most beautiful things about Pisces energy is that we're compassionate, we're empathetic, and we connect deeply with people. But the shadow side of Pisces, baby, we merge, we adapt, and we become so wrapped up in somebody else's world that we forget we're supposed to have our own. Just completely forget about ourselves. And that's basically what I did. And don't get me wrong here. Do not get me wrong. Lionel made choices that hurt me, and those choices belong to him. But this ain't about his choices. It's about mine. That's the part I have to own because I became ride or die because somewhere in my mind, I believe that's what love was supposed to look like.
You don't know what you're doing.
Looking back now, I see that Ride-or-Die Leka wasn't the last version of me. It was not. She was just the first because every relationship after that seemed to create a new character. And the next one, I'm going to call that girl the cool girl. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you already know about Steven, aka Mr. Situationship. Like, y'all probably tired of hearing this nigga name. But Steven liked to describe me as the wife he never married. And now, technically, he did come before Lionel, but life was life and relationships were relationshiping. And after Lionel and I were off, Steven and I found our way back to each other. And baby, when I say the chemistry was chemistrying, it was chemistrying. We enjoyed each other's company. The conversations were easy. The sex was absolutely fucking amazing.
If you cannot match the stroke to the beat, it ain't heat.
And the guy will come home from the military and baby, we will pick up right where we left off. Okay. Nigga had the keys to my house. I ain't gonna hold you. I was 17 living on my own at the time. But there was always one problem. And that was, I'd ask, what are we doing, Steven? And every single time he hit me with some version of, we don't need labels. We just love. Now, present day Leka would have laughed, got up, and went straight home. But baby Leka, she adapted because I wanted him. I wanted us. And somewhere in my mind, I convinced myself if pretending labels didn't matter kept him around, then labels don't matter. And commitment was not important.
Lie, 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 lie.
So I became that girl, the cool girl, you know? I was the woman who was too cool to ask for clarity and too cool to ask where this was going and to admit she wanted something more. And here's the crazy part, y'all, because I wasn't fooling Steven ass, right? I wouldn't. I wasn't fooling him. The only person I was fooling was myself because deep down, I absolutely wanted commitment, baby. I wanted the title and I wanted the certainty. But honey, I just wanted that man more. And looking back, I can see my Gemini sun and Mars all over this shit, all over the relationship. And I keep saying people love to talk about how Geminis are fake. But baby, I don't think I was fake. I was never fake. I'ma just tell you I was adaptable. Because Gemini learns people, it learns environments, and it figures out what works. But when adaptability isn't grounded in realness or authenticity, it starts looking a whole lot like performance. And I told y'all about performance. So, baby, cool girl Leka, she absolutely deserved a fucking Oscar for that act.
Hi.
After Lionel and after going back and forth with Steven for quite some time, one thing finally became clear, and that was I wasn't as cool as I kept pretending to be because I wanted commitment. I wanted marriage. I wanted a husband, and or at least I convinced myself I did. And once I finally admitted that to myself, I met a man who wanted the exact same thing. I met my first husband, Laron, in November. By January, we were married. And I know if y'all listening to this thinking, Leka, you married a man after 2 months. Yes, I did. Be better than me. And before y'all judge me, listen, I've already judged myself. But looking back now, I never really gave myself the opportunity to get to know that man. I knew what he represented. He was commitment. He was marriage. He was security. And I skipped right over the part where you actually get to know the person you're planning to build a life with. Child just skipped all over it. Marriage itself wasn't the problem, but as time went on, I realized I wasn't happy. And you know what? I told him I didn't want to be married anymore. And I told him that I wanted out. But then I stayed for 9 more years. Martyr Leka had officially shown up because I didn't stay simply because I believed in marriage. I stayed because I believed leaving would make me the villain in that situation. Because right after I told him I wanted out, he ended up begging me to stay. And around about that same time, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And according to him, the stress in our marriage is what caused it because the doctor supposedly told him that stress triggers MS. And somehow I became the stress, the reason reason and the whole explanation. Whether that was medically true or not isn't really the point of the story and is not for me to say. But the point is, I did believe him. I believed that if I left, I'd be abandoning a sick man who I had made sick in the fucking first place. So I stayed because guilt convinced me that leaving would make me a very bad person. And here's something that I've never said out loud: I didn't leave, he left. If I'm being honest, I don't know that I would have ever walked away. Not then, anyway, because I felt responsible for his health. I felt responsible for our family. I was the breadwinner, I was the provider, and I was the one that was making sure that everybody else was okay. And that's why I call her Martyr Leka. Basically, because she believes sacrificing herself was part of loving somebody else, and it wasn't. But she believed it. Hell, I believed it. By the time I met my second husband, DeAndrew, I had learned a few things, or at least I thought I had. So if you've been around since around Aries season, then you've already heard his red flag dating story. So I'm not going to retell all of it today, but it is important for y'all to know one thing. When DeAndrew and I first started dating, our relationship was open. And I say that it was open for him, but it was not open for me. And somehow, I convinced myself that that was okay. However, before I ever agreed to marry him, I made something crystal clear. I told him basically that I couldn't marry him unless he was actually willing to be in a committed marriage or to actually try to be in a committed marriage. So, baby, I ain't gonna hold you. I typed up an agreement, honey, and had this grown ass man sign it, baby, like I was the HR representative of Leka LLC. It was because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just thinking about my boundaries. I was actually saying them out loud. And in some ways, that was very much so growth for me. But the problem came after that because boundaries don't end when you communicate them. They start there, but they don't end there. So even after that agreement, there was still lies that occurred. There were still secrets that occurred. And there were things that was just straight up being hidden from me. And instead of asking myself, is this relationship still aligned with what I said I needed? I went back into trying to save it and trying to understand it and trying to work through it. But looking back now, I can absolutely see my little Venus in Cancer all over this shit, okay? Because Venus in Cancer is a nurturer, baby. Venus in Cancer compromises. She wants the people she loves to feel safe and all of the things. But the problem is, I spent so much time making other people feel emotionally safe that I stopped asking whether or not I felt emotionally safe. And baby, listen, I didn't feel emotionally safe there. And that's because boundaries aren't just about telling people what you expect. Okay, you can tell them all day, but boundaries are also about deciding what you'll do when those expectations aren't respected. And back then, I was honestly still learning that part. Looking back now, I can see something I couldn't see while I was living through it and living in it.
But like they say, hindsight is 2020 vision.
Every relationship gave me a different version of myself. There was Ride-or-Die Leka, Cool Girl Leka, Martyr Leka, and Leka the Compromiser. And for a long time, I thought those were just different chapters of my life, but they weren't. They were different survival strategies. I'm a big believer that every relationship teaches somebody something. Every relationship that I have been in has taught me something. Some of those lessons were beautiful, some of them were necessary, and some of them, I had absolutely no business carrying into that next relationship. And before I knew it, I wasn't just bringing baggage into my relationship, I was bringing beliefs about love, sacrifice, commitment, and beliefs about who I had to become in order to deserve love. And that's the part I find finally had to confront, because somewhere between 15 to 16 years old and my second divorce, I had curated a relationship experience around everybody else's needs, not my own. And I knew what they valued. I knew what they expected and I knew what they wanted. But if somebody had stopped me and said, Leka, what do you value? What do you want? What do you love? What do you respect? And what are your non negotiables and boundaries? I don't think that I could have ever answered, because I had spent so much of my life becoming what the relationship needed that I had never really stopped to ask who I was outside of one. Who was I outside of a relationship? And honestly, that's where I am today. For the first time in my whole entire life and in my adult life, I'm not trying to be somebody's girlfriend, somebody's wife, or somebody's forever person. I'm just trying to become myself. And that's why I haven't been dating at all, because I'm finally getting to know the woman underneath all the versions I created to survive relationships. So, y'all, before we get out of here, I just want to leave you with a question. What version of yourself have you become in your relationships? The ride or die girl, the cool girl, the martyr, the compromiser, or maybe you've been somebody completely different. But whatever your version is, don't just ask yourself who they were. Ask yourself why they showed up. So let me know down in them comments. But yeah, the red flag baby was me. And I own that. I take accountability for that. But hold up, let's not get carried the fuck away, okay? Because them niggas still want shit. So until next time, y'all, stay cute, stay petty, and be safe out there. Bye.